Hello, everyone. Thank you. I think we'll get started. Thank you for joining us today for another community education and engagement session. We've had positive feedback over the last few weeks from our participants and have enjoyed the opportunity to bring you interesting topics from experts who are passionate in the work they do. My name is Carrie Corsiato, and I work as part of the team at NAIT Continuing Education. We are very excited to share today's presentation, The Future of Plant-Based Foods, with Chef Maynard Kolskog. Chef Maynard is a certified research chef with the NAIT Center for Culinary Innovation. His research and product development is primarily in plant-based foods and ingredients, specializing in local prairie crop products and value-added foods. Chef Maynard will tell you more about how this came to be of interest to him and his thoughts on this rapidly evolving area in the food and culinary industry. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Today's presentation will be 45 to 50 minutes with a question and answer period to follow. As you might have noticed, your microphones are muted. We have done this to decrease technical issues and ask that you submit questions online. Chef Maynard will answer the questions following his presentation. Once the presentation wraps up, a short survey will be sent to you so we can get your feedback on today's session and ideas for future topics. And lastly, continue to check our website as new presentations will be posted once they are developed. With that being said, let's get started. Chef Maynard is ready to give us a glimpse in the work he is doing. Since he was previously a culinary instructor here at NAIT, you can anticipate being inspired, learning something new, and feeling a little hungry following the session. Chef, I will hand the mic over to you.
Thank you. I'll just bring up my presentation here when I can.
See if this ball is going to move on over. Doesn't want to go. Sorry, everybody, the ball just doesn't want to move.
You can also right-click on his name, Carrie, and transfer it over.
There we go. Is that working? Oh, there we are. I just had to press yes all along.
There we go. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Carrie.
Welcome.
Presentation. I presented this at the International Poultry Producers Exposition in Atlanta, Georgia at the end of January, which was really exciting for me. Hopefully you'll be relieved that there won't be any graphs or statistics in this presentation. It's basically about my experience working with plant-based foods, coming up with different types of food products and just experiencing the different types of ingredients that are available right now. So I'm a instructor at I was an instructor at the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology here in Edmonton, Alberta. We have a 2-year diploma culinary program. Along with that, that's what I taught in. Along with that, we baking program, 2-year diploma, and a 6-month certificate butchering program. And within that, we have the Productivity and Innovation Center, which is part of NAIT Industry Solutions. So basically, that's exactly as it sounds, industry solutions. So we work in, there's oil sands production, there's a nanotechnology, media, different types of other disciplines within the Innovation Center, and culinary innovation. And we do industry solutions for different types of clients. We also work closely with the University of Alberta. And this is our Center for Culinary Innovation. This is actually kind of an artist's rendition. It's newly completed. we were actually only in there for 2 weeks before we got kicked out due to the COVID epidemic. And we've been back in for about the past week now, which is really exciting. And I'm very happy about that. Actually, I think it turned out better than this. So I suppose that's pretty, the actual thing is better than the artist's rendition. But this was basically funded by NSERC, which is the Natural Science Engineering Research Council, which is a federal research council. And they gave us a $4 million grant on this, so $1.7 million for the lab itself, and then $2.3 million for operating budget for 5 years. And here's the team. That's kind of a picture of me. There's something the matter with my face there, but you can, Dana and Mariana definitely look good in that photo. Dana Gibson, to my right, is our business director. She's also a master in food science too, so she has a lot of great contribution to the type of work that I and my assistants do. And then to her right is Mariana Lamas, and she's a graduate of our program, former student, and she's my research assistant. Not pictured here is Joshua Ward, who was a lab technician, also a graduate of the culinary program, lab technician for about 10 years. And he came on just recently as a research assistant. So the types of work that we do product development, we do recipe development, we test new ingredients and formulations. We also do instructional video production, and that's kind of interesting because we did a 9-video series production for the Cirrhosis Society out of the University of Alberta, and that was instructional videos on how to cook without salt, which is very important for cirrhosis patients, that they don't have salt, but how do they make their food taste good? So we did a very in-depth 9-video production for them, and also special diet, and that came in from St. Michael's Healthcare, which was a very interesting project for us also. They wanted texture modified foods for people that had had surgery or have trouble swallowing. And we were able to do that using silicone molds, pureeing the food, and then using different types of gums and emulsifiers to keep that food together in an attractive looking form, as opposed to just an ice cream scoop of the food, which is basically what they got before. The parameters that we had to work with, though, is that the food had to be soft enough for them to swallow without having to manipulate in their mouth or even chew, but it had to hold its form. And so this is very challenging, but also when we were able to get it down, it was very, very, very exciting and fulfilling too, that we were able to achieve this type of thing. There was commercial product available. St. Michael's had tried it out, but the product would unform fine, but once it was warmed up, it would turn to mush. Ours was able to maintain its shape, which we were very, very, very pleased about. And then that's me in my lab. This is actually kind of a funny picture because it's totally staged. This was for a photo shoot for Avenue magazine. They wanted to do an article on the center and myself, and you can see in that photograph, we've got colored liquids, and there's fog on top of them. Of course, it's just colored water, and we went and got some dry ice from the science lab and threw it in the water just to make it, kind of give it a dramatic effect. So that's not at all what it looks like when I'm working on things. I'm working with fairly typical cooking equipment. We do have some specialized equipment, such as the PacoJet on the right-hand side of the screen. Thermal circulators, dehydrators, that sort of thing, but nothing terribly unusual and sciencey as that photograph would depict. Also, one of the things that's interesting about the photo, though, is the you can see on the whiteboard different notes that we were keeping on different projects that we were working on. We have some of the oat-based cheese that we were working on at that time. Kombucha, you can see. The kombucha project was actually, it's not even a project. It's just something that we like to make in the lab, but it was from another project that we had with Mother Earth Teas. We did a project with them about 2 years ago. utilizing their fantastic tea blends to make an iced tea, a bottled iced tea for them, which is now commercialized. And they're actually taking to Righand distilleries, and they're going to do an alcohol-based, gin-based drink with that. But we had all of these teas kicking around the lab that we'd gotten as samples that we hadn't used up, and we were wondering, what are we going to do with them? And we thought, let's make kombucha. So we got ourselves a SCOBY, and we've been making kombucha ever since, which we use as a beverage ourselves, but also we use that when people drop by the lab. You can either have a cup of coffee or you can have a kombucha. So just a lot of little things like that can be real big spin-offs. Above that, we did some fermentation too with Haskell berries. We did a lacto fermentation on them, dehydrated them, and then turned them into a seasoning powder, which was kind of fun and interesting. And then if you look below that, you can probably see that there's a thing called cricket garum on there. And we actually took crickets, turned it into a powder, and then fermented that cricket powder into basically like a garum type seasoning. So very, very umami-like, but we had to keep that inoculated and keep it at a warm temperature for about 6 months before it was finally ready. And it was quite interesting how that turned out. So those are just some of the things that we like to work on, I guess you could say, in our spare time and just out of curiosity in the lab. But as far as my backstory goes, like how do you become a research chef? And I was hired here at NAIT in 2001 as an instructor, as a cooking instructor, which was, to me at that time, it was like my dream job, having worked out in industry as a chef for 20 years at that time. I graduated from the NAIT culinary course in 1982. To me, it was just an amazing step and a dream job to work as an instructor at NAIT. And it was very rewarding, great team of other instructors, great leader. But then about 10 years ago, I was voluntold, I guess you could say, that I would be teaching the evening dining component, which was a third semester class at that time. We have Earnest Dining Room here at NAIT. And so that was kind of the fine dining component, I guess you could call it. And so I had to think to myself, I really didn't want to replicate the food that I'd done out in industry, which was I'd worked in hotels. I'd owned my own Italian restaurant for years from 1988 to 1993. I operated that with my wife. We're still married, believe it or not. But I didn't want to I didn't want to replicate that kind of food. And at that time, a move to molecular gastronomy was becoming quite prevalent, especially in very high-end fine dining restaurants. So chefs like Fran Adria, Heston Blumenthal, Gran Achatz, I was looking at the kind of food that they were making and just absolutely fascinated by it. And I saw this as an opportunity to try that food out and then actually teach how to do it. So I had to do a lot of back research, a lot of testing myself, bought a lot of books, really immersed myself in it. And with the backing of my boss at that time, Perry McKetty, was very supportive. He bought me my circulators, I was able to buy my ingredients, and he looked at my menus and he said, that looks great, let's have a go at it. And I did that for 3 years, serving up molecular gastronomy in earnest. And it went over very well. Students liked it. I certainly enjoyed it. But after 3 years, I got transferred. And I went to first semester range class where I couldn't use my circulators anymore. Basically, the students had to learn how to fry a pork chop at that time. But I wanted to stay involved in molecular gastronomy. So I developed a continuing education course on molecular gastronomy for professional and passionate hobby cooks that we delivered here at NAIT. But then research came along, applied research came along. And again, I thought, wow, I'd like to get involved with that. That sounds fascinating. And how would it apply to food? So again, I went back to Perry McKay and I said, how could I get involved in this? And Perry, again, being very supportive, said, we've been trying to get something to go pulse growers. If you can come up with a project that we can sell to the Alberta pulse growers, we can get you a project and a download. which sounded great to me. So I'll talk about that project a little bit later. It involved pulses, which are beans and lentils, of course. But one thing led to another. I got that download, I did that project, and then the University of Alberta came to us, wanted us to work with isolated proteins, and the ball was rolling. I was actually getting more downloads than I was actually teaching. And so I joined the Research Chef Association out of Chicago, Illinois. And they support and have education for research chefs and also food scientists that are involved in food development and production. So I joined them, and the next step for me was to take my certified research chef exam. So I did that. I went to Puerto Rico, where they're having the conference that year, and had a great time and wrote and passed and became a certified research chef. Again, too, I was very lucky. I was working at NAIT, and I had the support of my management that I was able to study for the exam and then be able to fly there and actually write it. So that's kind of my story. Of course, with plant-based foods, you know, you want to replicate the traditional product as closely as possible. But the difference with us, though, we're not food scientists, or I'm not a food scientist. We do this through chef-driven innovation. So I have a little bit of a food science background because I'm a certified research chef, but really, like right to the core, I'm a chef. And so that's what we're always looking at, are different quality indicators that are going to give us the best possible product. So the project with the University of Alberta was with Darren Walkie and Dr. Lingyun Chen, and they were working with different types of isolated proteins. At that time, isolating lentil protein. And I'd never worked with anything like this before, but Darren Walkie had heard about our program here with some of the research that I had done at that point and said, you know, the food scientists are working with the lentil protein, but they don't really know what to do with it. And they're having a hard time working it into different types of food products, especially attractively where you actually want to eat them. So he came by, we talked about it. He came by again and dropped off this big bag of gray powder called lentil protein and said, here, what do you do with this? And so he said it had the capability of mimicking eggs. It had emulsifying and foaming properties. We think that it can we can use it to replace eggs. And so I looked at baked products or perhaps even ice cream. So we just started developing different types of baked products with it. We did donuts, angel food cake, muffins, and pound cake, which I thought was a fairly good kind of indicator of what we were looking at as far as quality. You know, we wanted nice, light donuts. Angel food cake, of course, is very airy. That was going to be a major test on the quality of the product. Muffins are always very popular. And then just, of course, a good old-fashioned pound cake, which is right here. So we used the lentils, the lentil protein, to replace the eggs using regular flour at that time. But then when we had good results with the regular flour, we decided let's try and push this as far as we can. And that's kind of been our belief ever since, is that when we get these different types of ingredients, let's try them out in fairly low-hanging fruit types of applications, but then let's see how far we can push them. So we were able to get them gluten-free and also vegan compliant, which was quite exciting, with no loss in quality, or very, very little loss in quality in these types of formulations. So the next thing we wanted to try out was different types of ice, how that worked out. So originally we had the lentil protein. We were making good ice cream with it. We were using coconut milk at that time, which was kind of, I guess you could say it was kind of the industry standard as far as vegan types of ice creams go. And that worked out quite fine. And then we made an oat ice cream, got the attention of a company out of Saskatchewan that was already creating an oat beverage, and they wanted to make an oat soft ice cream. So again, too, that had different challenges attached to it from just making a regular ice cream. It had to do with the how thin the product was or the viscosity of the product so that it actually went into the machine properly. Traditional ice cream custards are too thick to go through soft serve machines. And so we had to adjust it quite a bit at that time. Protein at the outset. Trouble with lentil protein at that time, it had kind of a peppery to it, which we could mask. But when we tried mung bean protein, we found that we had a much better product. So we ended up switching over to mung bean protein. They're very happy with the results, and the product is now being manufactured out of California, and it's in full production right now. So that was kind of one of our first, big productions as far as getting it out into the world. Other types of proteins that we've used fava bean protein, which works really, really well also. We've done oat protein also with air classified oat protein coming out of the University of Alberta. Functionally, it works well, but the oat protein does have quite a bitter to it. So very hard to mask. But like I say, this is just something that's kind of in just testing to see the functionality of the product. So in that photograph there, that's some of the oat soft serve ice cream that we did when we were testing it out in our soft serve machine that was generously donated by DSL. Other types of ice creams that we've worked with, and these are we actually make either aquafaba or basically milks, like oat milks, ourselves in the lab. So we do an aquafaba with yellow peas, pressure cooking the peas, and then making an aquafaba with it. Same with the fava. Coconut, like I mentioned before, that's kind of the industry standard. But what got me thinking about making our own aquafabas and oat milks was that I started becoming more and more passionate about prairie products. So we're talking about Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and what do we have as crops and products here? And of course, we don't grow a lot of coconuts. So that's why I started moving over to looking at oats and can we actually make ice creams using aquafabas? And to me, using the aquafabas was a little bit more interesting than just using water. And if you look at soft serves and vegans ice creams, they're just using water in them. But I thought there's nutritional value in them. But when we were working on a project for fava soft serve ice cream, I found that the quality of the ice cream was much better. It had a nicer mouthfeel to it, and that would probably attributed to the carbohydrates that are in the fava, and no real off flavors, which is quite surprising. When you smell the stuff cooking up in a pressure cooker, you don't think that you're going to have a very good tasting product. But in these cases, our initial formulations, we were just using sugar in them. We weren't trying to flavor them at all. Just trying to get a really good, basically good mouthfeel, creamy ice cream. And we worry about the flavor later. But even using sugar, we were able to demo these ice creams and people thought that they were very good. And then, of course, adding flavor is pretty easy after that. I'll just go back and just show you some of these different ice creams that we have here. And these are some of the flavor masking challenges that we have. The pea ice cream, we had flavor masking issues. But we thought about what kind of flavors would be complementary. And we thought the one here on the right is pistachio, also chocolate at the top. Those are made with pea protein, but also pea aquafaba. The cherry ice cream there was made with oats. We did try doing the cherry ice cream with the peas, and the flavors just didn't mesh at all. So some important lessons learned on, do we really want to mask flavors or do we want to complement flavors? And I was kind of more interested in actually flavors. And this project, vegan egg replacements, this has been probably one of the most frustrating, rewarding. This has been a very, very challenging project that we've been working on for a company here in Edmonton. And they basically saw Just Eggs. And Just Eggs, it's only available in the United States. And it's a liquid scrambled egg replacements. You can make scrambled eggs with it. It actually curds like scrambled eggs, which was amazing. When I saw the videos, we actually didn't have the product because it's only available in the United States. When I saw the videos, it just blew my mind. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I thought, how are they doing that? But also you can make omelets with it too. So our client, he wanted this product, and it's not available in Canada, but he wanted us to come up with something similar to it. And so I'd worked with mung bean protein. Mung bean protein was kind of the primary ingredient in the product from Just Eggs. And I'd worked with mung bean protein, and I thought, oh, this shouldn't be a big deal. I've worked with mung bean protein, and boy, was I wrong. But like everything else, you go back to the drawing board and keep coming back to it. And we were able to start getting some of that curd, some of the curding characteristics using Gélane gum. And once I started finding the right combinations of Gélane gum and the correct type of Gélane gum, there's many types, we knew that we were onto something, and we were excited about that. But there are many other challenges that kind of popped up after that. The Gélane gum, in some cases, it would be it'd curd up and it'd be relatively stable, and then you'd lose all the characteristics of it. So that's when I was introduced to the world of buffers and those types of chemicals to try and keep those curds nice and try and keep the product stable. But then we had to work through the product to try and give it more shelf life, plus increasing the protein content also. And these are all things that changed the product every time you did them. So we'd have to go back to the drawing board and reformulate the product. So I'm happy to say that this is pretty close at its end, that I think that we're pretty much there as far as having a product that's very similar to the Just Eggs. And this is something that was reverse engineered without actually having tried the product before, which was, kind of hard to wrap your head around. When we were finally able to lay our hands on some of the Just Egg product, we were able to compare it and realize that we had something that was actually closer to a soft scramble. In this photograph here, this is something more attuned to like the Gordon Ramsay type of soft scrambled egg that I felt was kind of more closer to a scrambled egg than what Just Eggs had. Also, one of the things, it looks like a nice little pile of freshly scrambled eggs. But when you tried the product in some of the earlier applications, we would try the product and find that you just kind of mashed the eggs around in your mouth, that you actually weren't able to cut into the curds with your teeth, which I thought was kind of an important characteristic of eating scrambled eggs. So again, too, we had to manipulate our gums and manipulate our formulation to get that nice curd where you're able to cut through it with your teeth, as opposed to just kind of mashing it around in your mouth, which just didn't cut it for me as far as a convincing scrambled egg eating experience went. Then we get into the dicey world of meat analogs. So these are some pretty early ones that I was working on at the time. The difference with analogs is that I want to work with whole foods. So if you look at the ingredient box for something like Beyond Meat Burger, you'll see that it's pea protein, and then there's flavors and gums and emulsifiers, and that's pretty much it. And these whole food meat analogs that I've been working on, I want pulses in them. So on the one on the left here, you can see that that's made with kidney beans. I've also been using rojita beans, which are quite a bit nicer because they don't kind of have that refried bean flavor to them. We're able to get kind of a more meaty flavor with them. Right is made with northern white beans. And we're also incorporating mushrooms into them. Now I'm testing out, I really like the idea of putting beets into our analog too. Gives us some nice color, like really kind of nice meaty color, and that would be particularly in the dark example there. But we're also incorporating in different types of flour. So we are incorporating in pea protein and then different types of flours, so we can actually have a full protein amino acid profile on them. So things like brown rice flour, buckwheat flour, we're able to combine those to get a complete amino acid, which I thought was kind of important and exciting, considering that a lot of meat analogs don't really consider that. I think, they are going for the texture, they are going for the meat eating experience, but I thought actually having a full amino acid profile would be important to the quality, and I guess you could say just just how appealing it would be to the consumer when they're eating it. But the big this is texture. We're able to get something that tastes good. We're able to get something that looks relatively good, but to get that nice chewiness is something that we're working on hard to try and achieve. And so we're doing that with different types of proteins, different types of flours. I also wanted this too gluten-free and soy-free too also. We were in discussions at one time with the Good Food Institute. They had a competition that they were going to be awarding for meat analogs, and we were shortlisted on it, but we didn't get it. They liked our ideas, and one of the stipulations was no soy, no gluten. And so I thought, as I move forward on this on my own, I'll continue with that, because there's so much product on the market that is soy, has gluten in it, and there's a lot of people that they don't want that in, and so I thought I would stick with that. As you can see here, we kind of have a nice looking burger. Fries up pretty good. Like I say, the hard part about that, the most challenging part, is getting that texture down. And then we get into plant-based cheese, and so again too, this just kind of came off as just me being curious and just thinking, well, what if, like, why not try it? I was kind of reading up on cashew cheeses and fermented cashew cheeses, and I thought, geez, like, of course, you don't grow a lot of cashews in Alberta, so I thought, could we do that with oats? Can we take the oat solids and then form them into cheeses? So in this example here, we actually took oat groats, ground them up, cooked them, ground them up, and then we incorporated a probiotic into them to give a nice tangy flavor. But we also incorporated Penicillium roqueforti, which is the blue cheese mold. A little bit of filtered water just to adjust the consistency when we're forming the cheese, and a little bit of canola oil, Alberta canola oil, of course, just to kind of give it just kind of that fattiness that you want in the mouthfeel of the cheese. So this cheese here is about 2 weeks old. So what we did is we incorporated those ingredients, formed the cheeses, and then started letting the Penicillium roqueforti start to grow on the cheese, which it did quite nicely here. We have really nice looking mold on this cheese. And so at this point, I would break the cheese up and then reform it. So then you had those blue veins on the inside of the cheese. And then we would then age it for about 5 weeks. Then we would vacuum pack the product, and then we would continue aging it. So I have cheese now that I've had for a year in my fridge. We check it, it's getting tangier and tangier as time goes by, but the cheese is still good and has amazing aging potential. So it ages just like a regular cheese does, which is quite remarkable. Of course, getting the particulate size in the oat groats is very important, because I wanted them more like a cheese curd. So we had to get that particulate size quite small. I didn't want anybody to think that you're eating oats. This is a very creamy, cheesy consistency to it, especially as it ages. It gets creamier and more cheese-like as it goes. So we were able to develop these cheese. The one at the top there is quite an aged blue cheese. I still have that example in the fridge, and I checked it out this morning. I didn't try any of it, but it's smelling pretty tangy. So very, very cheese-like. The one on the bottom there, we made a Gouda cheese. And so this one we actually flavored with miso, and it's miso that we actually made in our lab with yellow peas. So we made our own koji with barley, and then we inoculated our yellow peas with that koji and created a delicious miso with it. And we use in our meat analogs, and we'll use it in this Gouda cheese. Also, we flavored it with some nutritional yeast and probiotic in this one to give it the tangy flavor. That finish on the outside, we did a hot smoke on it for about 5 minutes just to finish the cheese off. And it worked out really, really well, because you see that beautiful brown finish, and it's also quite glossy too. So it's a very nice look cheese. And again, too, I have examples of this in our fridge. that we've had for some time now, aging beautifully, and it tastes quite good. These cheeses don't, however, melt because they are made with oat solids. I was able to make a cheese, but I used a cultured oat milk, and then we just combined it with different types of gums and emulsifiers to get a meltable cheese, kind of more of a typical vegan cheese product. But these are actually fermented that we've created into cheese. Then we get into dairy alternatives. So this is a barista style pea milk. So coming up with different types of beverages isn't terribly hard, but in this type of situation, we had a client come to us who is a pea farmer, a yellow farmer, and he wanted something that was very similar to Ripple, which is a pea beverage and barista pea beverage that's on the market. Again, too, we weren't able to get the barista product that was available, so we basically had to reverse engineer that, just doing as much research as we could and as much testing as we could on the product. Coming up with beverages isn't difficult. Coming up with something like a barista product was quite challenging because we wanted those nice foamy tight bubbles that you see on the top there. But also too, once we got to this point, we were kind of high-fiving and getting all excited. But once you poured it into coffee, the acidity of coffee would make the proteins curdle, which was very, very unpalatable and unattractive. So again, too, is back to the drawing board as far as what can we add to this product to make it stable. And we're able to achieve that. And this is now being in the process of being commercialized right now. And then also we can get into plant-based yogurts. So if we can make cheese and this product is fermentable, we should be able to do it with yogurts. So I would say the one that I'm happiest with is, and closest to dairy, is the oat yogurt. And most of that is because of the beta glucans. Once we are able to access the beta glucans through cooking them and then pureeing them and drying them and that sort of thing, we're able to access those beta, and then we're able to heat them again, and we're able to get like a really creamy, almost dairy-like consistency. So this yogurt here is all beta glucans. There's no added gums to it. It's almost like a Balkan-style yogurt, and then of course we'd add a probiotic to it to achieve that nice fermentation and that nice tanginess to it. We have tried out using fava and yellow peas. It ferments, can get a nice tanginess to it, but those ones have to be manipulated with different types of gums such as xanthan and guar gum, which aren't bad. They actually make a pretty good yogurt, but that real creamy dairy-like flavor and consistency really comes through on the oat yogurts. And this is the very first project I had with the Alberta pulse growers that I was telling you about earlier. So my idea to going, can we come up with a pre-cooked bean product that's not in a can? So all we'd have to do with this product would simply be put it into a bowl, and you can, or you could leave it in the package even if you cut open the top on it to let steam out. But we made this 3 minutes, and you have a full side dish or entree. So we were able to, in some cases, we put sausage in it. I actually made a cassoulet with duck and sausage. In these types of situations here, like this one would be a vegetarian one. It'd be like red beans with jalapenos. And we're able to cook them in the bag in the sous vide method. So the sous vide method is immersion in a circulating hot water bath. I switched over to a Rationale oven, which is a type of combi oven, which we were able to go at 100% humidity, and we cook them for about 5 hours for these beans, about 3 hours for lentils because they're a little bit smaller. And the beans are cooked beautifully. They didn't split or get really, really mushy like retort beans or like canned beans get. These ones were, you know, a little bit firm on the outside, but nice and creamy on the inside. And of course, you had all of that flavor cooked right into them. So I did that for the Alberta pulse growers. And I did, possibilities are endless as far as different types of combinations. And then of course, flavorings go. We could do French lentils and, like I was mentioning before, the addition of meat. And we were also selling these in our meat store for some time also, and had really good feedback on them. We took them for testing at the University of Alberta, and we were pleased to find that we had a 90-day shelf life on them too, which was quite remarkable. And then on kind of piggybacked on that, I had a little bit of extra time on my download, so I started thinking about a pulse-based pasta. That something like this would be quite interesting. But there were different types of pulse-based pastas on the market, such as lentil pasta, but they're dark in color, they're fibrous. Some cases they didn't have great flavor. I wanted something as close to a wheat pasta as I could get, so something with neutral color and neutral flavor, but still really good al dente bite to it. So I created this by using chickpea and yellow pea flour. The reason I combined the two flours, the chickpea flour had a little bit too overt of a flavor, and just using yellow pea flour on its own, the color was a little bit grayish. So I thought, oh, I'll just simply combine the two of them, and I got what I wanted. I got something with a good neutral flavor, but also nice color too. And using different types of gums, I was able to get something that held up during the cooking process. A lot of different types of gluten-free pastas can fall apart during the cooking. It held together beautifully, but still had a good al dente bite to it. Some of the snacks that we've kind of worked on, again, too, this was just something we were fooling around with, and I just got curious with in the lab, is making a mushroom chip. And so as a chef, one of the dishes that we're all familiar with is a duxelle, a mushroom duxelle, and that's finely chopped mushrooms with shallots, some basic seasonings like salt and pepper, and usually to make it a little bit fancier, we might pour some in there. In this situation, I just combined mushrooms with a little bit of shallot, no salt at all, cooked it down like you would a regular duxelle, and then spread it out onto a sheet, and then dehydrated it in our food. Also, I should add too, to make them really, really crispy, I added methyl cellulose, so that was the crispy part of it. So we didn't have kind of a soft, bendable mushroom chip, but we had something that had really good crispiness to it. And voila, I came up with the mushroom chips. So we just peel it off the mat, and then I like to break them into these different types of shapes and sizes. But that is something now that we have a client, major mushroom producer, who's very, very interested in this product now. So these products, you kind of fool around with them, and then somebody finds out about them and they're interested. They want to market. So that's pretty exciting. Also, too, we've kind of worked with the idea too, now that THC or cannabis is now available and legal in Canada, is different types of thing that I was pretty aware of, that with different types of cannabis edibles, that there'd be a lot of garbage out on the market. So we started thinking about quality. What kind of quality products could there be? And we're thinking about jerky snacks, protein bars, beverages, seasonings. But we also came up with a new way of making gummy bears. And this is under vacuum in a thermal circulator. So we were able to add our flavoring, and we were making different types of kind of wine gums, I guess you could say too. And using glucose gelatin, we were able to make a vegan one with agar-agar, and these would be easily to incorporate with THC or CBD, and it incorporates evenly and very, very nicely into the product. If we were to use that, we aren't able to use those in the lab, but these are just testing these different types of formulations, but coming up with quality products, as opposed to kind of the garbage that I would think that would that would be flooding the market. So the plant-based foods in context. So the clients, they're coming to us, it's plant-based foods. And so that's pretty much how I got into this, is simply through demand. I'm not a vegan myself, but it's basically demand. And a lot of our clients are actual farmers that basically want to create value-added products with the crops that basically they're just selling at commodity. And of course, as we all know, commodity products fluctuate in price constantly, and they're also shipped out of the country and then sent back to us in a value-added form. So why can't we be doing that ourselves? So it's great to be working with these farmers and trying to develop, exciting new products with the crops that they're developing. As far as meat products go, we're perfectly capable and able to do that. But, I think the Alberta meat is very, very well marketed. Where I feel we really need to emphasize is some of the great crops that we have. So as you know, different types of grains, oats, pulses. You know, we're world class, and I think everyone knows that. But the way our economy is structured, everything is sent out and then sent back to us in a value-added form. Yeah, that's you know, basically working with, you know, different types of plant-based products. It can create a great story too. I think if the fact that we are focused on using specifically prairie-based products, um, for us, it's a lot of fun. It's challenging, but it's a great story for the consumer and for the farmer or whoever's trying to develop that product. But you know, one thing that I always wonder is what's going to be the tipping point in all of this. And point, I mean that we're all being inundated with how good plant-based products are for us and how good they are for the environment. But the tipping point when we actually start favoring these products over traditional animal products, definitely be on price point. There are people out there that are willing to pay that money because they believe that it's good for them, it's good for the environment, and that's very important to them. But for the average consumer, it's all going to be about price. So basically, it's getting now where there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of investment, and that price is going to start coming down. And so that'll be, you know, that'll be the tipping point. I think will definitely be price. Yeah, and you can just take a look at the basically, you know, plant-based foods aren't going anywhere. I've read so many articles, and a lot of the articles are basically there's a lot of money to be made. There's massive investment going into this. People are very excited. Some of the best minds in food are working on these products all of the time. There's huge teams. I think, you know, when we were doing our research, I think, you know, the team that came up with Just Eggs, which, you know, we did in our lab, there was a team of 60 food scientists and chefs working on that product, and they worked on it for like 10 years. You know, like it's pretty amazing and pretty exciting to see where this is all going. And you know, if you look at you know, people of my generation might have a hard time wrapping our heads around it a little bit, but millennials, sorry, totally get this, and they're the ones driving the market right now. So you know, it's not going anywhere, and it's going to become more and more prevalent, especially as the price drops. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Maynard. Maynard, that was a great informative presentation. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your story and a glimpse into the new center and all the great work that's being done there. Personally, I'm very excited about the developments with the oats, using our local farmers for products, and will be available anytime you need a oat yogurt tester. So we have a few questions, and I will read those off for you and answer some of our audience's questions and thoughts. So firstly, what I see is, could you elaborate on what exactly an aquafaba is?
Basically, it's a bean water. So if you open up a can of chickpeas or something like that, or kidney beans, and you have that kind of mucousy looking liquid, that's an aquafaba. But it's got a lot of really interesting characteristics to it. In fact, what I did today in the morning was I took that aquafaba, and it was about 200 milliliters of it. I whipped it into a meringue, which is great because you make all different types of things with a meringue, pavlovas, all sorts of things. So it can whip up a meringue, and it doesn't have that beany kind of flavor that you would think it would have. But what I did with that, I whipped it up, and then I dehydrated it, that foam, in a dehydrator, and then crushed it into a powder, and then I was able to bring it back with a little bit of water, with 200 milliliters of water again. I was able to bring it back into its full form. So using that to, like, what I'm looking at with that is using that to like fortify other products. So using that as a powder to fortify other products. So fava itself just has a lot of starch and nutrients in it, and you can use it in ways such as that. But in the ways that we're using it in the lab, we're making it less concentrated, but then we're able to put it into different types of and different types of beverages. And so it has nutritional quality, but because of the starches and carbohydrates, it has great mouthfeel too. It can give like a natural type of mouthfeel to different types of plant-based products.
Very good. Okay, another question. Have you examined the nutritional value differences between the plant-based alternative and the traditional variety?
Yeah, I have, and that's kind of where that gets itself into my theories and philosophy about working with plant-based foods, because I believe a lot of plant-based foods that are out on the market aren't as nutritious as their animal-based counterparts go. And somebody from Beyond Meat's listening, but Beyond Meat would be a pretty good example. Where you have something that basically it's and not a lot else as far as nutrition goes. And sure, there is nutrition in plant protein, but when you look at different types of micronutrients that would, like it's even within eggs, you're missing out on a lot of different types of micronutrients and minerals and those that are naturally in the animal-based product. So, like I was saying with the meat analog, trying to create a full amino acid profile like there would be in meat, I think is important. But as far as different types of micronutrients, hopefully, there are ways that they can be worked into these products. But I have looked at that, and I kind of realized that a lot of plant-based products on the market are kind of lacking.
Okay, I'm sure there are others that would share that same thought. Another question. This is a good one here. I'm sure lots of people have this on their mind. Can you buy this meat, cheese, kombucha, SCOBY in the meat shop at NAIT?
Meat, cheese, kombucha, SCOBY?
Yeah, all of them separately, not all combined. The
So,
meat, the cheese, the kombucha, SCOBY.
Okay, so yeah, no. How's that for an answer? The meat we're still working on. Like I don't even like to demo things until I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to buy it. I guess that's kind of a good way to put it. So like if we're working with a client, I'll work on the product until I get it to a point where I know that it's not gold standard, and gold standard means that it passes all of the quality indicator tests for the food product. Usually what we try to get things to before we pass them off to for commercialization or starting, ramping them up for full production. But so I guess back to the question. So the meat's far from it. The kombucha, we just make that just for laughs, just because we like drinking kombucha, and we serve it up to people when they come to the lab, just as a kind of a hospitable beverage to share. And the cheese itself, that is in the hands of our client right now, and they're looking at commercializing it, but it isn't available here at NAIT. I've never, we do have like intellectual property, and I can't take the stuff myself and start selling it. That it goes, we have agreements, and it has to go to the client, and I just can't walk away with it, even though I created it. It isn't mine anymore. It's the client's. So yes, no is the answer.
Yeah, that's really good information to know that the work you're doing is for clients. So it is a part of NAIT, but it is a partnership that you have created with other companies or individuals. Okay, would you consider there will be more of a push now for people to reduce their meat consumption due to the current pandemic case and the slaughterhouse cases?
Well, that might be example that I'm talking about, because they're talking about meat, especially beef price going up. And I talked about that with my wife, and she's like, well, I guess we won't be eating much beef anymore. And so I think that with that sort of thing happening, that yes, people will probably start looking at plant-based foods more. Not everybody, but I people will probably be looking at, okay, let's eat vegetarian instead of 1 day a week. Let's eat vegetarian 2 or 3 days a week, just because it's hitting us in the pocketbook much harder to eat meat products, particularly in the situation where we have like production disruptions happening with COVID.
Okay, yes, and also the whole idea of using oats is, again, using our local farmers. And so I think a lot of people will also be looking towards that into the future. Another question, do you have any product recommendations in terms of commercially available whole food vegan meat products?
I've seen lots of really interesting work being done on things. I don't think they're commercially available though. A couple of years ago, I went to Denmark to tour different types of food research facilities that they have. And there was one company called Shepa there. And I don't think the product is available here, but the mushroom company that I was talking about working with on the chips, they're looking at making a mushroom burger. And this company was making a really delicious mushroom burger. Like it was better than a beef burger. It was so good. But like I say, I think it was only available in Europe or even in the Netherlands. And then I've been reading a lot of stuff about, even reading an article about koji based beef, which was fascinating because, like I mentioned, we made koji out of barley in the lab, but they're making big vats of koji, and because of the way the mycelium grows together, it has almost like a meat-like texture to it, which sounded fascinating. And so there was that company that's doing some cool stuff, and I guess their bacon is really good. I forget the name of the company though. I was just kind of reading the article this morning. Like we tested a bunch of stuff that was in the stores, just to kind of wrap our heads around different types of vegan meats that are out there. We checked out the products that are out there, and there were some that were quite good, and then some that were really, really horrible. I guess if I was going to name one individual and manufacturer, it'd be Eve's. Eve's has been they've been around for a long time. They're based out of Vancouver, so they're Canadian, and it's a former chef who started up the place. And I think their product all around is pretty good. Like, he's a chef, and so made by a bunch of food scientists or anything like that. So I think we found that the Eves was probably the best that overall that we found. But like the Beyond Meat burgers, like they're good. Like they're pretty amazing. So some of those types of products, Impossible Burgers, Beyond Meat burgers, they've put so much research and money and everything into those products, and it really shows. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, the next participant, thank you for the presentation. Very exciting new products and alternatives to meat and dairy. Are the growers open to genetically changing their crops to help you produce a better product, or are you able to do this modification in the labs yourselves?
Yeah, we have to work with what we're giving. So like with the isolated proteins, for instance, I was getting originally the products that I was getting were from the University of Alberta, and these are kind of benchtop products that they're isolating the themselves, and so there would be issues with flavor and that sort of thing. So we'd have to look at masking. The products that we're getting now are from Top Health Ingredients. So if anybody's interested in getting isolated proteins to work with and enhance their foods with, I would recommend contacting Top Health Ingredients. Their products are excellent quality, and they've been very, very generous with us. Where we're using their products in product development, so hopefully there'd be the spin-off that whoever our client is purchases Top Health Ingredients, but they've been very generous with giving us lots of samples to work with. So a lot of it is having to manipulate the products ourselves in the lab, which is kind of the only way I've ever worked. I've never really they can manipulate their crops to get kind of more what I'm looking for. I usually get the products, and then I try and manipulate it myself with different types of ingredients like sequestrants and buffers that I talked about before, along with different types of gums and emulsifiers to get the characteristics that I want or I think the product should have to make it match up to its animal-based counterpart.
Seems like it would be much less daunting, I guess, or less of a task to be able to do it in the lab versus having to change and modify our crops.
Yeah, and that's how you learn too. Like if it wasn't for a lot of these problems, it's constant problem solving. But that's how you learn about different ingredients and how all these different ingredients kind of work together or not work together in some cases. Yeah.
Okay. Fermentation is becoming so popular for the home chef. Are there any plans for continuing education courses for the public?
I haven't really thought about it. I know that in our culinary program, Nigel Weber and Troy Limburner were both teaching fermentation in their labs, and they're doing really, really excellent products. I haven't really thought about it, but that's probably something that Dana Gibson, our business director, would probably be really interested in looking at, because we are looking at developing different courses that we could do out of the Center for Culinary Innovation. So that's actually a really good tip. Like I say, like the fermentation I've been doing has I just been learning as I go along, and I've had really good luck with it. But I suppose it'd be kind of nice to turn that into something like a course, because we have quite a bit. And like I say, it's turned out well. So that's actually a really good suggestion. I think I'll go with that.
I think so too. I think we'll be taking that forward for sure to the manager in that area. Let's see, we have some more here. So I do recognize it is 1 o'clock. So for those of you that would like, participants that would like to hang on and hear the rest of the questions and comments, please do so. For those who are unable to stick around, thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope you've enjoyed the session and the valuable information we received. So on to the rest of the questions. One of the biggest challenges in making plant-based cheeses is trying to mimic the flavor. What ingredients or methods have you found that works to get closer to the original?
Probiotic, that's going to give you your tanginess. And we were just going to Shoppers Drug Mart and buying probiotic capsules right off the shelf. And, for something like, a couple 100 grams of product, we'd put in maybe 3 probiotic capsules. And so that's going to give you your tangy flavor, but also using miso, so regular soy miso at the store, which would work really well. It's got great umami flavor and nutritional yeast. Those are going to give you those really nice umami flavors that you want in cheese.
Are you finding that there are any probiotics that you are using over other ones? Not necessarily the actual name of the product, but the actual bacteria.
I don't know the name of the bacteria right off. It's basically just the regular health food probiotic that you can buy, those probiotic capsules. And yeah, I haven't really explored much beyond that, because those have worked really, really well.
Yeah, because there's so many different strains of bacteria that they can include. Yeah. Okay. Oh, you have lots of offers for people to come by and be product testers.
Some kombucha would come by too.
Lots of people saying thank you very much. The information was very valuable. Another question, huge revenue generating potential, especially for sourdough. Okay, just some more agreeing with, some opportunities to take this elsewhere. So high revenue generating potential, especially for sourdough, kefir, and cheese. Somebody says, thank you, and super interesting presentation. I'm just going to check the chat. That is it for questions. I'm just going to check the chat in case anybody added any in there. Lots of thank yous. Very interesting and encouraging. A comment, I eat plant-based a little, but I find many of the products available are highly processed. In fact, ultra processed, like the burgers. Best advice is to avoid the highly processed products, but eat healthy plant-based foods. So that's asking for your best advice. Best advice to avoid that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the problem I think too, with becoming a vegan, is that you have to have time and you have to know how to cook. Otherwise, you're pretty much at the mercy of food manufacturers. And I find that a lot of vegan vegetarian foods are highly processed. So I guess if you want to do it right, like they're not going to hurt you in small amounts, but really learn how to cook, and you're going to have to really carve out a large amount of time to do it properly. And it's too much for a lot of people. It's very time consuming, and you have to have a high skill level as a cook to be able to get those flavors and textures that we take for granted all of the time when we are on an animal-based diet.
Well, I'm sure everybody appreciated seeing the work you were doing in the at the center with the alternative meats. So we'll look forward to more information on that, because as you mentioned, the Beyond Meat is a good product, but it also does have a lot of fillers in it.
Yeah. And
you're trying to move away a little bit from that. Okay, when you pressure cook beans, are you using the fava from there for your creations?
Actually,
pressure cook beans, are you using the fava from there for your creations?
Actually,
there's a little bit more on that. I'll just keep adding to it.
Sorry.
Do you need to let the beans sit in the water for a period to achieve a good consistency? And I know canned beans, fava works well, but my own usually is very watery. Okay, that's it.
Usually when we are creating it, I'll usually pressure cook the beans. There's really not a lot of water left over. I'll take the beans out and then I'll puree them with water. And then I'll strain it out through a mug. And that's the aquafaba that I'll use in ice creams and that sort of thing. So it's much thinner. It's not a real thick kind of mucousy like consistency like you do like right out of a can of beans. It'll be thinner. It's like a bean water almost.
Okay, thank you for that. We still have some more questions. You're good to answer them, Maynard?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one I'm not sure you can answer, but I will put it out there. What would need to happen for plant-based foods to make a significant dent in the world hunger and poverty?
Geez, that is a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I think a lot of it is political will, if I can go in that direction. Like so much of it, like a lot of it is really political will that this is something that can really change the planet for good. Like when you talk about how resource intensive animal-based farming is, well, you can feed with plant-based products. I think a lot of it really comes down to the economic structure and political will, but that's really getting out there. I think that's as far as I'll go.
Okay, I think I have one more here. As a culinary student, oh, another one just joined. Let me see, where did that one go? Well, we'll start with this one. Are there local greenhouses that you use to source ingredients?
No. Yeah, if we need anything, actually a lot of the time we'll need like one carrot or something. I'll just go to one of the fridges and just grab a carrot. So yeah, I love the farmers market. My wife and I go to the farmers market quite regularly. In fact, my wife is a huge fan of the farmers markets, and we get all of our vegetables from there in the summertime. But we do our own backyard garden too. But no, we usually work in very small amounts, and I'm in a culinary school, so I kind of just grab what I need.
Okay, and last question. As a culinary student, how does one get into the food research career area?
That's also a really good question, and something kind of quite timely that I was actually speaking to two of our chairs and they're working on the new curriculum development. And what they want to do is have a fourth semester elective coming up probably in the next two on food research. And so they wanted my and Dana Gibson's contributions on that. And so that would be one way. We're actually going to be having a fourth semester class. I don't know if anyone could enroll. Dana and I have also talked about different types of continuing education courses we could do. So it probably might be a situation where we've developed a continuing education course on food research and development. I would definitely check out the RCA website, so the Research Chef America website, and look. They're an amazing group. They have so much to offer as far as education, membership. They have student memberships. It's a great. I would definitely check out the Research Chefs Association, RCA, and look at what they have on their website. Just kind of go from there. I know there are more and more companies that need food research. So Kitchen Partners would be one of them, and there's a few others that need food researchers working for them. We have manufacturers right here in the city. So it's something and that's one thing that the RCA has demonstrated, especially in the United States, is, this is beyond being a food scientist now, chefs. And they know that they're only going to get that quality food product with the knowledge and palate of a chef on the team. So I think it's a really burgeoning career. But at this point, probably in Edmonton, it's probably a little bit hard to think, how do I get into this line of work? But we are trying to develop the curriculum here at NAIT to certainly help people move into that line of work. But check out the RCA for sure.
And hopefully we can fast track some of those courses that people have suggested at continuing education. So watch for any of those upcoming courses on our website. Of course, it will take a little time to develop, but maybe that is something. We obviously heard the interest today. So, and I think that is it for questions. So thank you everyone for your participation today, for all your great questions. Thank you, Maynard, for all your valuable information, sharing all the hard work you're doing, the interesting work you're doing. We will look forward to further developments down the road, some of the products coming out of the center. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Carrie.
And that is a wrap. Thanks so much, everybody.